Lovely to be here up on Pendle Hill. It's a very beautiful place. It's right at the beginning of June in 2010. And what an exciting time to be alive. That's the thing that I'm just filled with at the moment. We're so fortunate to be alive at this moment in the evolution of this world and all the beings that live on it. Very exciting time. Right, well, what got me started was actually an experience of supreme frustration. It was reading every single book that Carlos Castaneda published, all the way back in the 1970s, in the early 1970s at that. And I just knew immediately this was for me, and I had this incredible sense of frustration because this was all taking place in the Sonora Desert in the southern United States of America and northern Mexico. I had no money to get to those parts of the world. If I arrived there, I'd have absolutely no idea how to meet a shaman. So I was left with this incredible frustration of this is my path and how on earth do I get on it? So I solved the problem the way many people do, which is I just forgot all about it because I just felt there was no way I could progress this. And that was the situation for an incredibly long time. And my life became absorbed with other matters. I met the woman that I fell in love with and married, and we had 2 children. And we became absorbed in the third dimensional reality of home, family, children, school, work, and all the things that can so easily use up all your time. And it wasn't until 1992 when my first really big break came. And what I love about this is I had absolutely no expectations whatsoever. In fact, if you said to me this is where my shamanic practice would begin, I'd say, what are you talking about? No chance. I went to Glastonbury Festival in 1992 and I got exposed to all sorts of amazing ways of life that I'd never encountered before. You've got upwards of 100,000 people, and many of those people are busy showing you what they're interested in and what they're fascinated by. Well, out of that entire festival experience, there were 2 activities were the ones that did it for me. The first one was taking part in my very first ever sweat lodge, and the second one was actually being a witness to my very first ever fire show. And that was it. Within 6 weeks of those 2 experiences, I was off in a camp and I put on my first sweat lodge. I then put on my first fire show. I absolutely loved it. The people that attended these events had no expectation or idea I'd be doing those things, and they had a really great time. And I thought, this is it. I love it. I love doing this. It transforms people, it's opening people up, and this is what I really want to do. And for many years my shamanic practice was in that way. It was what I call an exoteric practice of shamanism. By that I mean it was all external, it wasn't internal. I wasn't doing any internal experiencing. I was actually outside working with 3-dimensional nature in terms of with a sweat lodge you're working with the hot stones. You have got the earth with the stones, that's rocks. You've got the heat from the fire warming up the stones. You're sprinkling the water onto the stones, so there's the water, and the whole space is filled with the warm air. So it's earth, air, fire and water. That's a sweat lodge. I absolutely loved it, and so did everyone who participated. And then the fire show, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Here were people doing unbelievable things with fire. Some of them seemed incredibly dangerous, and that made it all the more exciting, and all the more reason to want to find out more, get involved and start practicing. And what I realised very rapidly is in our society, out of the 4 elements, earth, air, fire and water, the most neglected element is the fire. Because everyone experiences air. Up in Pendle Hill we've got a surfeit of it. The earth, we're mostly exposed to the earth unless we shut ourselves away in offices. Water, most of us have showers, baths, we drink water. Yes, those 3 elements, they're pretty well catered for, but fire, most people don't even have a fire in their home. Most people don't even know what a candle is. So I became very moved by the extent of the power of fire to transform people outside in nature, with a load of people setting fire to all sorts of objects in the field, taking people through a ritual theatre experience journey, opening their minds and hearts up to all sorts of things they'd never even thought of. That's what happened to me in 1992. I just became opened right up, and so that's what I shared for a very long time. Sweat lodges and fire shows.
Yeah, so how did you move on from that? Did you go through books or did you go through formal training to actually get into the kind of otherworldly shamanic process?
Well, starting in 1992, I then had a 13-year journey with fire shows and sweat lodges, and it extended outwards. I started doing marriage ceremonies. I became a celebrant, and I still do perform marriage ceremonies upon request. Also had the great pleasure and privilege to perform a couple of funeral services, and also a puberty service, and also a birthright service. Those took the practice deeper, because what I was touching in on then was the really big events in people's life, which is entering into the world, birth, becoming a woman or a man, puberty, getting married, and dying. They're the really big rites of passage we have in our society, and people have them in every society on this planet. So really fundamental stuff. Felt really great. And really, this isn't an easy thing to talk about, but it was watching the intense suffering and dying of the woman I married that was what caused me to take the deeper step and to move from exoteric outward shamanism to esoteric inward shamanism. It was watching my wife slowly die of cancer, knowing that despite all that we studied together about diet, about activities, exercise, all sorts of alternative therapies, so many different things over a 23-year period, and well, she lived for those 23 years, longer than she could have done, and then she got a terminal diagnosis after 23 years, and that's when it really started to hit home that despite everything we'd done, and that included also orthodox treatment, she did have operations as well, nothing worked. Nothing actually did the business. Nothing shifted from I'm going to die to I'm going to live. It was perhaps the hardest experience of my life, being with the person that I had loved and had brought 2 children into the world with, and had to accept my mortality, my limitations. It was 2 weeks before she died. She was in hospital and I was visiting her. It was a very exceptional, rare time, because this might seem a strange thing to say and you might not have thought of this, but if you've got someone dying of an incurable disease, the one thing you don't get much of is time, just the 2 of you. Usually there'd be one of our children present, or a friend, a very close friend. So time just the 2 of us, very, very rare. But 2 weeks before she died, we had this time, 10 minutes, that's all we had. No nurses, no doctors, nobody else around. And she looked at me and I looked at her, and she asked if she could put her hand on my head, and I put my head close, and she put her hand on my head, and I stepped back and I said, I tried to help you, I tried to keep you alive, and I failed, didn't I? And she said, yeah, that's right, you tried to help, you tried to cure me, you tried to be my knight in shining armour, and you failed. That's right, you did. Yeah, that's right. And it was a moment of complete acceptance between the 2 of us. Nothing that we'd done had worked. Nothing I'd done to help had worked. So then we move on 2 weeks to the day of her death. She's dead. The evening of her death. It's late, it's dark. This is in March 2005. I'm in a tunnel, a very black tunnel, and there's no light in it. And as far as I can see, there will never be any light in it. And then the phone rang, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And my very dear friend Amanda rang me up, and she said, hey, would you like to start a shamanic practitioner's course? It begins next month. And I said, yeah, sure. I didn't think, I didn't consider, I just answered immediately yes. This subject, which had fascinated me since I was in my early 20s, 30 years ago plus, suddenly someone was saying to me, hey, you can get training, it starts next month. Of course I said yes. And so that's how it began. And my gratitude to Amanda is endless for putting me in the right direction. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for watching and for all of you for subscribing. We really appreciate your interest. And it's been quite some time since there has been a load of films done, and we've got a load to come out over the next few months, and we look forward to your comments, and thanks very much indeed for tuning in.